Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at another edition, an extra special one, of our Behind the Scenes series. My name is Brandon Gibson, and I am the Managing Director for Marble City Opera. You've seen me on a couple of these now. And today I'm joined by three of my esteemed colleagues, three of the best voices in Knoxville. You may remember all of these gentlemen from various Marble City Opera shows, particularly our chocolate and wine concert series that is very popular around this time of year. And so even though you're surrounded by all of this chocolate, do try to contain yourselves. But we also want to give a special shout out right now to two of our other colleagues from the Chocolate and Wine concert who couldn't be with us today. Brandon Kofer, new father, he is busy, and Breon Ewing, the tenor in the group, who also cannot be with us this afternoon, but again, I am thrilled to be sitting with these gentlemen. We go back a long ways, and they are fabulous artists. Um, Gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves? I will start with Mr. Rogers, the elder of the group. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, everybody. As Brandon stated, I am the most senior of the group. I must also say the most refined.
Here
It
we
is
go.
indeed a pleasure to be here with you guys. I have thoroughly enjoyed singing with you. Chocolate and Wine has been wonderful, a wonderful experience for me. Brandon, is that all you want, or you want a little bit more detailed, or let's everybody just introduce
You
first?
have the room, sir. I will never tell you to stop going. So speak as much as you want to, especially when you're saying nice things.
Well, a little bit about myself, as most of you know, I teach with Knox County Schools. I am a teacher of students with special needs, which is a passion of mine. I graduated from Knoxville College in '93 with a Bachelor of Arts degree, and then went on to the University of Tennessee and worked towards my master's degree in vocal performance. Um, I've been all over the place, all over the globe, and sang with several premier artists in the opera realm. Most of you know that I do opera, not only opera, but I sing Christian music, gospel, jazz, blues, you name it, I do it. That's all I have to share right now, Brand.
All right, fair enough. We'll keep it going. Mr. Hendricks.
You say Hendrix? Oh, that's me. One more Hendrix. I am probably the gypsy one um, of the group. Gosh, I come to singing through by way of bassoon and composition and all of these things. I studied with the late great Dr. Holder at Carson Newman College. Well, then college, now it's university. Back in the day, and then also did some graduate work at Converse College down in South Carolina. Um, and Goodness, what else? Uh, I'm the I don't know. I'm the wacky one. My rep is like all over the place. That no one else has. All the Russian stuff, and I won't let anybody ever forget that. That's my jam. Uh, and these guys, I mean, we do go way back, either from Knoxville Opera Productions or high school um, or church when we were like 5. If we're talking about Kofer, we go way back. But I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. And Mr. White.
Hi, I'm Dominic White from Knoxville. I study with Perry Ward. When they say we all go way back, we definitely go way back. I studied with Perry Ward when I was at Carson Newman, and later went on to the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, where I studied with Glenn Siebert, and now I study with Scott Bearden. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and I love working with all these guys.
I think we've touched on it already, but we do all go way back. Went to high school with Dominic, the neighboring high school to Maurice, and I'm certain that is for as long as I've been in Knoxville, I think 17 years now, longer than that even really. People have asked me, are you Michael Rogers or do you know Michael Rogers? And so the well-meaning people of Knoxville. And so great history, but also immense talent is gathered in this group. And before we go any further, I just want to say I appreciate all of you for your artistry and your talents and what you bring to anything that you're on. We've done concerts together, full productions together, everything. We've been singing, just waiting around for stuff to happen. It's all been wonderful, and everything is blessed because you gentlemen have touched it. And we've mentioned it a little bit already, but I'd like to expound on that a little bit. What brought each of you individually to opera? You know, it is not traditionally something that, as African American men, that we find ourselves doing. So, what first sparked that love for opera for all of you? And we can go, anybody can jump in, or we can go the same order if you'd like. But
Well, I'd love to take that. I was thinking about that last night. You know, coming from, I'm originally from Williamsburg, Virginia, so we've always had music in our family, but never to the extreme of opera. So when I arrived at Knoxville College, we had a fabulous voice faculty at Knoxville College, and I studied under the direction of Judith Barton. And there was a program that was a co-op program between Knoxville Opera and Knoxville College. And we were allowed to come and somewhat like they do the children's performances, or they did before. So we were able to go over the vocal singers were able to go over and view the operas as they were in production. And my first opera was Madame Butterfly.
very nice.
And I was hooked. I was literally hooked after that. And that's what literally got me involved and engaged with opera. I thought it was like just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And have been, you know, been doing it ever since then. But yeah, it was that co-op program that we had from Knoxville College to Knoxville Opera that really got me interested. And of course, that was over 30. And of course, that was over 30 years ago. I will say that was over 30 years ago. So I see y'all laughing. Don't clown.
I wasn't gonna ask you when it was. I was gonna leave it at that, but you volunteered. So I don't know. Anyone else want to go on that?
For me, it was actually sort of quite different. I was a violinist in middle school and hit a growth spurt. So my choice was to switch over to viola or cello, but I'd spent 3 years already with violin. And so I had to take chorus, and the rest is history.
Wow. For anyone who
For
doesn't
me,
know, that Dominic is the tall one of the group. So that makes sense.
Yep. For me, it came, like I said, I came from bassoon. And I opera specifically, I was kind of in the middle of my studies at Carson Newman, and I was taking voice at the time. And I was, you know, just looking for different singers of the songs that I was doing, as good students do or try to do. I tried to be a good student sometimes. And I came across this recording on YouTube of Dmitri Kvorostovsky singing Votratos, which is the Toreador song. And I was like, who is this? And like, so then I went down that rabbit hole, and then I found Russian opera and all these other things. And I was like, why is this not a thing anywhere? And then I like dove into all of that. And then also just meeting who I would study voice with, Rebecca Turner at Converse. That was kind of what made me decide to like change my major composition to BA, so I could just get out of Carson Newman and just go on the grad school focus one. Because at that point in life, I was so indecisive. Like I was in literally all but one ensemble at Carson Newman. Like I was playing bari sax, I was playing bassoon, I was playing oboe, I was playing alto flute, I was singing an a cappella. I was all over the place. And while it was tiring, I kind of needed it in a way. But that's kind of like how I started going down that way, and then I went further down that rabbit hole as time went on, and here I am.
I think it's really interesting that both you and Dominic kind of started off as instrumentalists, and that level of artistry and even precision is very evident in your singing as well. So I can tell that that's in your background. I did not play anything. I peck around at the piano from time to time, but I did not pick that up. So I guess to answer the question myself, I was always in choir. I started, growing up and moved around a bunch, military family. When I got here, I kind of was thinking, okay, I'm good at choir. What do you do next after that, right? And we did a program. I had the great pleasure to attend Austin East Performing Arts and Sciences Magnet High School here in town, and we did a production. We did this really unique thing about the life of George Washington Carver, and I was in the gospel choir as well as the regular choir. You remember these days, Dominic? Yeah. Um, Shout out to it. Speaking of that gospel choir, if Miss Thomas is out there and we're watching anywhere, shout out to her. But had wonderful teachers and everything at Austin East. But we did this program on the life of George Washington Carver, and I had a solo in that. I sing some spiritual, and through that I met Bill Landry, who narrated the Heartland series here in town for a long time. And he said, "Young man, you've got some talent." And so he set me up with a wonderful voice teacher here in town who's now deceased, Peggy Howard. And I started taking voice lessons from her. I think that was my junior year of high school. And then even still, though, I was like, okay, I'm in voice lessons. I'm really good at choir. What do you do, with that? And similar to Michael, they were doing the Rossini Festival. And they did one of the outreach things for that and allowed us from the school to go there. And what was the opera they were doing? It was Signor Brashino. And I saw those guys up there and I said, oh, well, they sound like me. This is what you do when you get a choir. And this is the next level of that. And so decided to major in voice and wasn't terribly indecisive. I was maybe a little too focused when I got to UT. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I did my first 2 years of vocal performance. But then it's hilarious. They needed some Black people for Big River at the Clarence Brown Theater on campus. And the woman who was directing that had directed one of the shows I'd been in for Knoxville Opera, and contacted her. She said, yes, please come. And so from that, I also ended up doing theater and got into musical theater. And so I do a little bit of everything: opera, Shakespeare plays, musicals, a little bit of everything. But it's a beautiful time. It all started from, and really goes to show the importance of those outreach events that opera companies do, because you never know when some child out there like one of us is going to see that and be inspired to, take up the art. And that's really a beautiful, beautiful thing to hear. Now,
it's so funny that you bring that up, because my first memory of you, you came to a project grad luncheon and you sang. That's the first time I had ever heard you sing. And someone knew I was a singer and said, you've got to do something with this guy. You've got to, help him along, pull him along, make him do stuff. And it's it's wonderful. I agree with you. That outreach is so important. And I love the fact, when as a board member of the opera company, when I first joined, that was my shtick, if you will. I was the chairman of the education committee with Knoxville Opera, because I thought it was so important to give back and to pull those young men or women or anybody that was interested in pursuing the arts and singing.
Yes. And so that you're not the only one out there on that age circuit. I would say I remember that was my senior year in high school. And
that was your senior year.
So that was what, 17 years ago? Oh, just adding it all in.
Not everybody could be 25, Brandon.
Oh yes, despite the fact that we went to high school together, I forgot Dominic is 25. Never- but I digress. But that does bring up the subject of prior performances, and I know all of us have done shows together and seen a number of other ones. But since we are talking with Marble City Opera audiences today, what what is your favorite thing that you've either done or seen performed by Marble City
Mm.
I was also thinking about that as well, Brandon, and I of course loved Blue Monday,
Oh yes.
and of course the chocolate and wine. But I think that my most favorite thing was when we were at the mansion. And I think it was Traviata. Was that when we did that at the when Catherine?
Yes, you cut out for a second, but I believe you were talking about Traviata.
Yes,
Yes, at Westwood. Yes,
yeah, that was just phenomenal.
that was a wonderful experience for anybody out there who maybe is unfamiliar with that production. So La Traviata, famous opera, takes place inside of a mansion thematically in the story. And so, true to our mission of using site-specific performance spaces, we performed that show inside of a historic mansion here in Knoxville. And uh, it's convenient. They have a music room kind of that in there in the house that they used as a parlor. And so we set up our little mini orchestra there and had a camcorder on the conductor, and then had screens set up, flat screens set up in the various rooms of the mansion, so that in whatever room you were in, the singers could follow the stick and stay on beat with the orchestra. And we had the audience move from room to room for that production along with us as the characters and singers flowed from one room to the next. And that's a beautiful historic home in Knoxville. But the acoustics were great because it's just an old, brick and wood,
Mhm.
space. So you're right. That was fun to do and wonderful performance. So thank you for bringing that up. What about you, gentlemen?
Ooh, for me, of course, I love singing with all of you gentlemen, and everything I've been a part of. But I would have to say it was actually the first time I think that I was exposed to Marble City Opera. Amelia Lost. Uh,
Oh yes,
Catherine was in, it, and I thought it was an extremely powerful work.
yes. So Million Lost. For anybody who unfamiliar with us, was a world premiere that we did. A dear friend of our organization, excuse me, the composer Larry Dellinger wrote that piece, and it's about a homeless woman who he actually encountered just in his neighborhood. He would pass every day, who thought that she was Amelia Earhart, the famous, lost airplane pilot. And so he wrote an opera about her, and Catherine, our executive artistic director, premiered the role, and it was here in Knoxville, and it was beautiful, beautiful production, and just such an interesting concept, along with Larry's orchestration. And just it was really well done, really nice.
Mhm.
So thank you for bringing that up, and shout out to Larry Dellinger. He's out there somewhere watching, I know. Thank you, Maurice.
Man, okay, so it's kind of a tie for me. So I've got, because chocolate and wine was like, just because it was like just an idea that popped in my head that was like a random daydream that I was like, hey, and then it just kind of happened. So that holds a special place in my heart. But also, Sweets by Kate. Um,
Yes.
there was so much going on at that point in my life. Like, I mean, of what I was going through, and that was certainly uh, not me at my best as an artist. But just also going through like with each other, the cast and everything that story put us through. Like it was dealing with LGBT issues, and not that typical way that made it about that, but it was about just what was going on in their life, being there for each other, and everything that was going on just in this town. And just kind of, like at closing, when there was kind of whatever happened like on the sidewalk that happened outside of the bakery that night, like it was just a really memorable thing that was going on. And like, to have thought that, because I think maybe somebody died on the sidewalk outside while we were waiting. And to think that what we were singing and that outro to that opera might have been someone's last thing that they ever heard, kind of like,
Wow.
it kind of hit me really like, dang, this is what we do. Like,
Yes. I think that really speaks to, I think, the true purpose of the arts in general, but in particular, music is such a special and powerful thing. It helps us, personally in dealing with issues, and can help us connect with people really in whatever they are going through. The old proverb says music soothes the savage beast, right? But that beast is inside of all of us. And
Yeah.
you make me think back to that production. That was a wonderful piece. For those watching, the show Sweets by Kate was a professional premiere that we did, written by Griffin Candy, another great friend of the organization. But it really was an interesting opera and fun. That's what I remember about that. It was very fun and quirky. But to your point, I almost forgotten about that incident outside of the bakery. But you're right, just thinking about, wow, this is important what we do, because you never know what's happening in the world outside or just around these events that you're taking part in. That's important to remember. Wow, so makes me think about that. Now, that segues me to my next point of, we are Black artists, and it is Black History Month, and we know our art inspires other people, but talk for a moment about figures in Black history, music or otherwise, didn't have to be, who have inspired you in your work and what you do.
This year, oh, sorry, go ahead, Morris.
Anyone?
Oh no, go ahead.
This year for me, I've really been spending a lot of time really digging into people who are part of Black history, but a lot of the times we don't hear about their narrative in detail, as in, someone that big like MLK or Malcolm X or something.
Exactly, you always hear about them.
Yeah. So, this month I'm reading a Black author. Like I'm trying to watch different movies. Like James Baldwin is a really big figure for me. The last thing I think that I read by him was something in high school. And so to revisit it as an adult, as an African-American male in the Southeast, it is crazy that this book was written in 1965, but it still holds so much truth and so much power about how African-American men are treated in this country.
Yes.
So definitely like James Baldwin and Josephine Baker, like anyone who flies under the radar. I think it's super important to make sure that we talk about these narratives because they're part of our history and they help to shape African Americans, into who we are.
You're exactly right. And it's shocking to think that someone of that caliber, I kind of have a similar revelation about James Baldwin. It's like, man,
yeah, and like
his writing books.
It baffles me that he is not, like one of the champions of history, but it's because, for multiple reasons, the time when he was writing, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it is super important for us to honor these people and to keep this legacy going because these are extremely important legacies.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's extremely important, Dominic, that you said that, because sometimes we want to put that history on the back burner.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't want to embrace that. And I think that every opportunity we get we should be the champions, or reaching out and telling our younger generation about our history,
Yes.
about our musical history as well.
Mm.
Bringing that to the forefront, the genre, the spiritual genre,
Yes.
ragtime, blues, all
Yes.
of those things are indicative to our culture.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten to a point where we're either ashamed of them, or we say that, okay, that's the past and we don't want to deal with that. But I think we do ourselves and our children a disservice by not embracing those particular genres. One of my favorite singers, and I'll always pull him up, would be someone like a Paul Robeson, or William
Yes.
Warfield,
Yes.
or a H.T. Burley. Those kind of people. When I'm thinking of music that has really challenged me, but just also made me feel some kind of way, I think about those composers and those singers.
I think you're absolutely right on that. A lot of conversations are had now about trauma and how certain things recall certain traumas, and there are some efforts being made to kind of minimize some of the things from our history. Um, but I would agree with you that we don't need to minimize these things and these artists and this art that was inspired by those traumas. I think some of the deepest pain inspires some of the most beautiful everything.
Yeah.
The most beautiful flower blooms from a volcano that exploded or something like that. It's that type of sentiment in that these things are part of our history, and to even go further, they are the basis for every other art, particularly music that we see now. There would be no rock and roll if there hadn't been any blues.
That's exactly
There would be no jazz if there hadn't been any ragtime. There would be no pop if there hadn't been any of it back in the beginning. So we do ourselves a disservice by disregarding or forgetting our origins. And so I think it is powerful to remember those, not just one time a year, but all the time.
right.
Maurice, I know you have some thoughts.
Man, okay, so well, you beat me to Paul Robeson first.
I was going to say the same thing. Yes.
But I also like Marian Anderson.
Mm.
Just going on the people that set things up, and that we all like. Without Marian, there would be no Leontine. If y'all, I mean,
Yes.
like, and
Jesse, no Kathleen, yeah.
Yes.
yeah, and speaking of all of them, like I have to, in the spirit of, speaking on things that are that are not like the major things, like each one of you in your own, like we're all living Black history. Like Brandon, I told you when it happened,
Yes.
like that you're a general director of an opera company, like that in itself is Black history. And I mean,
Yes.
for me as as a singer, like, and I said this earlier, like Dominic as an inspiration to me, like you were the one that turned me on people like Kathleen Battle and Leontine and all these other Black singers, that I discovered and became inspired by. And I mean, and Michael, like when we first worked together on Tosca, and I was just playing around, singing Scarpia stuff, and to have like what validation I got from you, like that means a lot. Like, so the way that we all influence and inspire each other to keep on going, like I think that's so important. And it's been, and continuing to also realize everything that you just said, that we're so enriched in this culture, like almost everything where you step on, you step clap instead of clap step. And the fact that we have a part in that, and it's like we're all over all music at this point, globally. This is not just an American thing. This is globally, whether it's K-pop, J-pop, rock and roll, like all of that.
Yes.
And didn't Dvorak say, in order to find the American sound, you should look to African Americans and Native Americans or something to that degree?
Something to that effect.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. New World Symphony. That's what that
Yeah,
is.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful.
A selfish plug, which I will be singing on our upcoming
Don't speak
concert.
around. Ask everybody at the end what you got coming up. So save it.
Selfish.
Right before the end.
Selfish.
I love it. I love it. But Maurice, to your point, yes, I think it's important, yes, to look back on Black history, but also to realize that we are living, breathing Black history. We are making history right now in what we do and in the art that we create and the music that we share with our communities. And it's an awesome responsibility, but it's also thrilling to think that we are all a part of that. We're not just following the narrative, we are creating the narrative as we go along. And it's an awesome privilege to take part in. And so speaking of that privilege, one last question for all of you here. We all are aware of the various events that happened last year, the outcries that went out in response to the tragic deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. They sparked, protests and conversations around the nation. And as artists, as fellow African Americans, as Black men, what part do all of you feel that music, and your art in particular, have in that battle for social justice?
That's a great question. It's deep. But I look over all of the civil rights movement, how music has been a weaving factor
Yes.
in the whole dynamics of our struggle.
Yes.
And I think that it continues to be that way. I think music does something to a person that that just words and deeds just can't do. There's something about music that touches the soul. And I think that if people would open their ears to hear that music and receive that music, that some real hearts can be changed. Some real ways of thinking can be changed. But Brand, they have to be able to receive that. And I think sometimes as an artist, I think that I try to bring that to the soul of my music. Even if I'm singing something from singing an aria, you still get a little, of that, brother, in the aria. Little sprinkles, of essence in that. And I think that's what we bring, and I think that's what we can continue to bring to the struggle.
Yes, I would certainly agree. They say all the time that music does something, as you alluded to, beyond what words alone can do. Words can move you, a melody can move you, but putting them together is something even more powerful altogether. And it's a tool in the fight, certainly. Dominic, you look like you wanted to say something?
No, I was just agreeing. Sorry.
No worries.
Still forming mine.
No worries at all. It makes me think of, I can keep going, of a poll that I saw recently that I agreed with. It spoke of the hymn, This Little Light of Mine, and how whether or not you consider yourself a Christian or not, if you grew up in a certain part of the country, if somebody starts singing This Little Light of Mine, you either sing along, you know the words, you feel it in your heart just a little bit, something. It made me think of the great Harold Middlebrook, the Reverend here in town. I was at an MLK event last year, and he led the audience in that, and I could look around and see all of these suited and booted professionals who, at the sound of This Little Light of Mine, all pretense dropped, and suddenly they were, in church with grandma, holding hands, touch one of your neighbors and say, neighbor, and it was in that moment of openness that you're right, I saw the power of music. And I think if we can all stay in that place of innocence and openness and connection with our fellow man, that the situation would be much better, that it would not be a struggle for social justice, but social justice would just be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of you gentlemen ever spent any time up at Highlander?
I have not personally, but I've heard.
So there is a really interesting wall in their main center that sort of does a history, a timeline of freedom songs. So freedom songs, whether it's for women's suffrage or it's for civil rights, whatever. Like, it's really interesting how music has been a catalyst for so many different movements. And like, I didn't realize that "We Shall Overcome" was written at Highlander. Did not know that, and it's crazy for sure.
Yeah, I had no idea either. That's
Yeah, one of the ladies working there told us that, and I felt that to be really interesting. But I think now we're sort of seeing the shift where music, and not just music, but the arts in general, are having to become a catalyst or a way for people to get their point across. Like, whether it be for the stuff that we saw with all of the police brutality last year, or it's climate change, whatever it may be. But people are finding that the arts are, again, such a universal tool that they could get to people, like,
yes.
as long as they're open-minded and have an open heart, of course.
Yes, because it's one thing to block out when someone's talking at you or saying that. That's easy to ignore.
Right.
But if the melody is sweet or if the beat gets you, then that's not something that you can keep out. You feel that.
Like a hug,
Exactly, a hug.
Like
And
a really tight hug, yeah.
exactly. And that's something that stays with you and you can't ignore it. So I think you're right. Arts, and music in particular, as a catalyst for change is something that we're seeing, but something that's always been.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
think
just for
even
different
Simone,
issues these days, yeah.
exactly.
Like, issues I would never ever have expected. Like, I heard a really catchy song about climate change the other day. I was like, you know what? That's a really cool song.
Exactly. And if you had just heard an NPR report on climate change, would you be thinking about it today? Probably not. But that song stayed with
A song. I was like, okay, yeah.
you. Yeah, exactly. Maurice, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, to roll off of all of that, like, I mean, the arts have always been dangerous in the way that we are, in a way, what drives what people think, like, and part of it is we have to sometimes be careful not to be used as propaganda in a way, because I mean, like Shostakovich was in Russia, or just it's the different things that we want to say, that, like, this in a way is what makes us the artists that we are, is what we're trying to say all the time. And for me, for the longest time, like, I refused to program spirituals and gospel and stuff like that, just because, like, if I'm singing anywhere, like, that's the thing that gets handed to me anyway. And I think of myself as more of a citizen of the world, kind of like Baldwin, in that sense of like, the first time I was ever called just an American was when I went to Paris. I was in an airport and I was an American. But here, like, everything else gets thrown before that.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that, like, not only have I never been to Africa, like I'm just me from Knoxville, Tennessee. Like, I was born and raised here. This is I'm not coming from somewhere else. This is home.
Exactly.
And you know what I'm saying? And so, but on top of that, like, but once everything happened over the summer, like, my response to that, because I mean, for the longest time, like, I would use so many different, types of music to say kind of the same thing. Whether it be Russian or French or German or anything like that. But that happened, and something triggered in me that was like, you know what? I want to, as confrontational as I am as a person, I want to make sure where I stand on some stuff.
Yes.
And so that's when we were doing kind of like our Zoom concert thing, and I was like, you know what? The Frederick Douglass aria.
I remember the Frederick Douglass aria. I was just thinking
that I did, and look, the way you're looking now, you really do need to sing that though. But that's when I
haircut or
gears let me put a little. Not that I didn't put a little soul in my music, because it's more there in my body language than anything, I feel. But that's when I was like, you know what? I listened to more hip hop and everything, and just dove into the parts of the culture that I was not necessarily ignoring, but just wasn't taking the time to partake in, because there's so much stuff out there, and
right.
Like, I don't want to be pigeonholed, but at the same time, like, I just love to learn and hear and feel and take in everything. And so for me, I just wanted no mistake in what I needed to say at that point in time, because there's so many conversations going on which need to happen. Like, there's nothing that makes me more angry current day than when someone's like, okay, boomer. Like, I hate that, because it's like, we're just saying that to stop the conversation that we should be having in the first place. Like, we heard something we didn't like, so we're just gonna shut the conversation down. No, that's not it.
Exactly.
Now, that's probably in response to some, something that is ignorant, but at the same time, it is just as ignorant to stop that conversation. If we don't keep the conversation going, that hurts everybody. That hurts LGBT, that hurts Black people, that hurts the Asians, everybody, like women, all of that. Like, conversations need to happen, period.
Yeah.
And that's what art is. That's what, and the thing I love about opera is that is all art at the same time, whether it's dancing, visual, all of that.
Yes.
And so that's my 2 cents.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think it's important, and what you said ties in directly to the sentiments that everyone else has expressed here. You can't have the art without the artist, and as artists, we are all, fully formed human beings. We are our culture. We are that little sprinkling of soul that we put on everything. We are, men. We are African American men. We are, all of these things, and we bring all of these things to our music when we create it, to our art. And these conversations that are going on around the country, are important to us, and you can't separate that from, what we do. And I think it's just important and telling, and just really beautiful thing how all of us in our own way are bringing our full selves to our work, and just using that as an impetus for change. It's a really beautiful thing to see and to be a part of with all of you. And so, gentlemen, I've kept you here for a little while. I appreciate it. Now, before I let you all go and before we sign off, now, Michael and everybody else, do you guys have anything coming up that you want to share, with our viewers, or, just anything that you want to plug before we go?
COVID testing pending.
Wear your mask, socially distance, wash your hands.
We've got we'll be recording on the 20th for
the 20th.
Yeah, for our kind of Knoxville Opera
Black History Month.
It started out as MLK, so now it's Black History Month because we had to delay because of the virus and whatnot.
My bad.
A lot going on the world.
It'll still be MLK What they've done this year, guys, is as far as MLK, they've just stretched it out and made it a whole year of events.
Yeah.
So it will still be inclusive of that MLK celebration.
Commission, right?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say the MLK Commission, right? That sponsors
Yeah.
all of it.
Yes.
They usually do one,
Be,
and now they're doing it year
So
round.
it's okay.
so like, for example, we'll have the parade in March or April. They'll still have their luncheon, but it'll just be over a period of time now instead of just that.
Yeah.
3 or 4, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing is that you can see these gentlemen as a part of those events coming up. Stay tuned for all of that. And we will share information on all of them because we love them as artists and because I'm the one who does the posting on our pages as well. So believe us, you'll hear about these events when they happen. I just want to thank you guys again. It's been a lovely afternoon to share with you. Just to plug our own we have coming up. We do have Royal Flush that's coming up soon at the beginning of March. But then also we are doing Tosca in June. And Mr. Hendricks is joining us for that. I believe those dates are June 3rd through 5th. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our website, marvelcityopera.com for information, performance dates, tickets, all of that about that performance and everything that we have coming up. Gentlemen, thank you again. It has been a pleasure. We're going to sign off now.